Hello, greetings, and thank you all so much for coming out today. You are in for a treat. This is John Nix. I've known John, we have known each other for
4 years.
yeah, at least 4 years.
Yeah.
John has worked through the Alachua County Community Remembrance Project. John recently joined us on our trip to Montgomery, Alabama and back. But John is a fifth generation farmer here in the state of Florida, which is absolutely incredible. John is both an advocate for small farms, for Black farms, but also for the environment. And thank you for coming out today. John will speak for about 30 minutes, and then I'll give you a little heads up at 11:05 for those of you who might need to sneak out for the 11:15 service. But also we can open it up to some questions. Sound good? All right, with no further ado, welcome to John Nix.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for coming. Thank you for being interested in small farms. Particularly, thank you for being interested in the plight of small Black farms in Alachua County and in North Florida. As Andy had said, I've been in the farming business as long as, sorry, Princeton. I've been in the farming business since I was born. My great-grandfather, who was a slave, was a farmer also. And the community, the Rochelle community, which is east of Gainesville, is the community in which my family grew up in. It was the community in which my great-grandfather was a slave in. And after he was released, he started his own farm. He never did sharecrop. He actually started having his own land. Then my grandfather took parts of land and bought them together and have the present location where we have our 60-acre farm connected to another 35 acres that was owned by my cousins. So I have a farm that's about 90 acres. And when I grew up, we did row crops on the farm, and we had cattle where we leased land from the surrounding timber company. At that time, many of you might know it was Owens, Illinois, and then Georgia Pacific, and then now it's Weyerhaeuser. And we leased about 2,000 acres from them where we ran wood cattle. And that's where I got my love for horses. And as you'll see on some of my slides, I can't get rid of that love. I'm in the cattle business, but I'm also in the horse loving business. So they take quite a bit of the resources, but I love them, and it's a way to bring family together. So I'm going to start out by playing a radio ad that was done by WFT, and it sort of talked about my love for our farm. And then we'll show some pictures of the farm, and then I'll go through some things on the plight of Black farmers.
I'm Ronnie Nix is a farmer in Rochelle, a historic community in eastern Alachua County. He says during the Reconstruction era, thriving Black farms took up much of the area.
And over the years, families have lost a lot of that land.
At 69, Nix is on a mission to preserve the Black farms that are left. He's president of a newly formed co-op of local Black farmers working to become profitable again. His grandparents started the farm he now runs. His great-grandparents were enslaved here. I joined him as he loaded up his truck with feed and a massive bucket of bread slices and headed toward the farm. His farm used to be much larger, more than 2,000 acres of livestock and crops. Now, much of it has been clear cut for a wood-burning power plant, a sore spot for Nix. He points to trailers along one edge.
And sometimes I feel like the Indians riding through, looking at land that they used to hunt and stuff, and now they have the settlement sitting there.
Today, his farm is a few dozen cattle who are very excited to see him pull up with bread. The story of Nix's farm is like that of many Black farms in the US. When the industry became mechanized and white farmers took out loans for things like tractors and irrigation, Black farmers often couldn't. The Farm Service Agency discriminated against Black farmers in their lending, resulting in the late 1990s in the largest civil rights settlement in US history. Many had to sell, and the Black-owned farms left are about 50 times less profitable on average than white farms. Jake Pulowski, a partner at the consulting firm McKinsey & Company, analyzed these disparities and what's at stake.
So our research estimated that there's at least $5 billion in economic value created just from closing the performance gap.
And it's not just potential money on the table. It's dinner.
This helps address some of the megatrends facing the global agriculture industry, in particular things like food security, and as well addressing urban food deserts.
Nix is working on solutions. He's collaborating with county officials to create a USDA-approved meat processing plant so local farms could sell to customers directly and boost profits. Profit would be necessary to solving a second puzzle, getting the next generation interested, like Nix's grandson, Keelan Fuller.
I've been going out to the farms like before I could even walk.
I spoke with him at Santa Fe Community College, where he's studying animal science. He says he's always known he would take on the farm.
I'm all for taking it on. I want to make sure when I take it on, I can continue to bring success.
But Nick says his grandson is rare among his peers.
There's been a misconception by young Black generations that farm work and agriculture was connected to slavery. And like I see it as a blessing, they see it as work.
He says this association with slavery ignores the other role of farming in Black history.
Land ownership, being able to be independent and have your own food is a foundation for what made Black people in general get their freedom. And they sacrificed so much for that.
Nix hopes to take his ideas to a new role. He's running against Dylan Thomas to represent Eastern Alachua County in the upcoming Farm Service Agency election. Report for America at WUFT News, I'm Katie Heisen.
Thank you. That was an article that was done, and it was really good to have them interested to come out and see our farm. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about myself, and then my farm, and then the history of some Black farms. I come from a family of community service. My mom and 5 aunts taught in the Alachua County school system. So when I came back home about 6 years ago, I could not help but be drawn into our school system because I felt there was a need there. So I'm currently serving in Alachua County School as an energy conservation engineer. And I try to help our kids understand STEM. And I also go into our schools and try to reduce the amount of energy used in the schools in the area of electricity, gas, and water. I worked for 35 years with Florida Power and Light Utility as an energy engineer for them. So I come with a good understanding of how our grid system works. And right now we need all the help we can with the GRU. Uh, Along the line of community service, I'm also serving as the chair of our climate change advisory board for the county and city commissioners. And I work with a great group of people to determine how we sustain ourselves or reduce, develop reliance when we have extremes, extreme heat, extreme cold, fires, extreme when the ocean starts to rise and all the people come up to Gainesville. So we have a good group, and I chair that climate change committee. I'm also working with Keep Alachua County Beautiful. Keep Alachua County Beautiful is chaired with by Gina Hawkins. Keep Alachua County Beautiful is the group that takes all the paper. We have volunteers that remove all the paper around our roads, the graffiti off their roads. So that's another group that I feel very, very strong, that's doing a lot of community service, and I enjoy working with them. Also, as you know, the county bought the McCarnell Park, and now it's called Camp Coscahuila out toward Micanopy. I work with that group, and we're doing some great things with kids. It's a nature park. It's called the Coscahuila Nature Retreat Park. And what we do there is we bring kids out there during the summer, during the spring. We have events. You'll see a lot more about that. And we teach them. We actually are building a nature center out there. And we're training teachers how to teach kids about the environment. So I'm very encouraged with working with that group also. So now a little bit about my farm. My farm is, as I mentioned, 60 acres. I have 30 head of Brangus cattle. I produce about 15 to 20 calves a year. And right now what I do is I will take this grass-fed beef and I will fatten one up and finish it on feed, and then we will sell it to individuals. The majority of what I do is I sell to a livestock market. I would like to, in order to be more profitable, I would like very much to be able to take the majority of my cattle and sell it directly to people. And the way that system works is, that's one of the reasons that I want to really push for the slaughterhouse in Newberry. Newberry wants to do it. We have some opposition from people that think that beef is not what we should be doing. We should do a plant-based society. But I don't think we're ready for a plant-based society. I think that we should have options, that we cannot take beef away. And when we do our own local beef, it's very sustainable because we don't have to truck it in. We don't have to bring in, and plus we have better control of both how the animals are treated and the quality of the meat that we get. So you'll start to see a lot of this in the newspaper. Commissioner Anna Perez is one that's really pushing for the meat packing plant in Newberry. So this is one of the things that I think would help me personally. It would help a lot of small farmers if we had a place to process our meat so that we can get it to our local people. So I'm going to give Andy some information on my farm and how you can actually buy meat. We also, as the Black Farmers Association, are going to put together a list of products that Black farmers have, and we'll have a website where we can list these things. So we'd love your support in buying from the group. Let me tell you a little bit about the history of Black farms. Well, before we do that, let's do a little quick slide on some animals at my farm. Like I said, it's a family farm. I grew up enjoying it, and I have currently, I'm a husband, I'm a grandfather, and I had 3 daughters. They're all servants of the community. Again, one of them actually is a circuit judge in Orlando, and I have 2 teachers. So this is some of the horses on my farm. We recently had a foal. His name is Spike. And there's another, that's Lucky. Lucky to have him. And here's some of the newborns that we had this year. That's Fancy. That's Diamond. There's 6 horses. Here's some of the cattle. Right now I have about 30 head. That's a Centipole bull. I crossed them with Centipole and Angus. Another one of the horses. That's my wife. She's out there playing with the cattle. She's actually a city girl that got transferred to a country. It's very much a family farm. And one thing I really like is that's my daughter, the judge. And that's a grandson and the bull. Actually, the grandson that you saw in the picture, that was actually when he was that little. Yeah, and there he is. He does a youth fair at the Alachua County Youth Fair, and that was his last goat was his last entry, and he got second place in that. Yeah. So a little history about Black farms. In the United States currently, only 2% of the farms are Black farms now. In 1925 was the peak of when there was Black farms. It was actually 15% in 1925. 5 years after slavery, there was 2% of Black farms, 5 years after. Now we're 100 some years later, 200 years later, and there's still only 2% of Black farms. In Alachua County, we probably are at about a little bit above, we're like 3%. But that's just numbers, but acreage wise in the United States in 1925, there was about 900,000 acres of land being owned by Black people. Now it's only 35,000 acres. So numbers of farms versus acreages of farms, big difference. Black farms are so much smaller. So what we're really pushing for now is to get Black farms not to sell their land. So part of what we want to do is encourage Black farms to stay profitable. So that's my push for that next generation. I've been lucky enough to have a professional career so that I can support our farm. But I want to make sure that that next generation can make a profit. And my strategy is to sell directly to consumers. because as many of you might know, when you have a volume of cattle that's only about 20 calves per year, you don't make a lot of money. So you have to stay and take the middle person out and have an educated group of people that buy because of your quality and because of what you do for the environment. So that's our push. We want to make sure that we're doing a sustainable farm using environmental practices that are good for the environment. We do rotational grazing. We don't put any pesticides down on the farm. We don't use any hormones or anything with our cattle. I rake all our manure into the ground so that becomes our natural fertilizer. All of our meats are fed with organic feeds. So we don't put anything that's pesticide oriented or environmentally unfriendly into our farm. So the USDA has programs that's offered, but we're still not getting our share of these things as Black farms. The news clip mentioned that I was going to be running for to be a representative on the farm service agency, and that's the agency that takes the USDA money and distributes it locally to farms, along with the NRCS, Natural Conservation Service Agency. Well, I'm really busy, so between the farm and the other organizations that I work with, I didn't get out and campaign. It's over. It was a really close race. In fact, actually, I was traveling, and I was bringing my daughter back down from Atlanta, and I actually didn't get a chance to even cast a ballot. So it's a 2-year term, but I do plan. I'm going as a guest, as an alternate to the meetings, and I want to find out how it works, because one of the things that held Black farms back was that they did not get the money that they needed to be sustainable, to actually make a profit. We did have some good things that happened. The Pickford-Lickman suit that they mentioned there gave out about $2 million to farmers, but a lot of them didn't really receive anything. So they estimate that over the entire 20th century, 12 million acres of land was lost by Black farmers. And that was lost because of not being able to make money. That was lost from taxes, people not being able to pay the taxes. That was lost because farms weren't profitable. They had to sell. Families moved from the South to the North so that they could have better jobs. They moved from the rural areas into the city so that they could have jobs because they weren't able to make money on the farm. My community of Rochelle, as I mentioned, I grew up in a really lucky time. My family still had a lot of the land. I was surrounded by uncles and cousins that had their farm. So I had almost the 2,000 acres to ride, which we leased. And also we had about 600 acres of cropland. A lot of work, but it taught us how to actually learn things. I recently attended a engineering conference, and I was talking with the president of this 50,000 member Global Engineering Society, and I was telling him about me living on the farm. And I'm a storyteller, so I grew up with grandparents that just love to tell stories, and I passed them on to my grandson. But I told them what I learned on the farm that helped me with leadership, and I told them about my grandfather teaching me how to work with people like you work with cattle. First of all, cattle are bigger than you, larger. Horses are bigger than you. You can't make them do anything they don't want to do. So it's the same thing with people, right? A person convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So you have to make sure that you have convinced people to do and buy into what you're saying. So 3 rules. Never chase the cow. They'll run, they're bigger and they can run faster than you. So you never argue with people. You always, my uncle would say, go around them. So what you do is you wait and you listen and you offer options, giving them options, giving them another way to view things. Secondly, he told me always hold the bunch. When we're bringing cattle in and we're at the gates and one breaks from the bunch, hold the bunch, let her go. We'll get her later. Hold the bunch. When you start and you have a point and you're focusing on something and someone brings up another point out that's contrary, don't go out on that tangent. Stay with your point. We can talk about that later. Third, let them find their way. When you're bringing cattle through a gate, everybody learns things differently. You have to back up, let them find their way through the gate. If you push them too fast, they will back on you. They will stampede on you. So you let them find their way. With people, everybody comes from different perspectives. You have to let people find their way. So those are some things that I've learned when I work with my cattle and I work with people that's working with my cattle. I tell them, you have to obey those 3 rules. You know, you in order for you to make them do what you want to do, they gotta want to do what you want them to do. Lastly, and I'm going to talk about the future and then what we would love to have you do. Our mission, and my mission personally, and joining with some other Black farmers, we want to not only survive, but strive. We want to be able to be profitable for that next generation in order for them to stay in the farming business and not sell off our land. If you look around, you've that been here for a while, you know, around Gainesville and surrounding areas, farmland's disappearing. Condos are happening. I often mention that the environment is the new slave. We got to make sure that we don't sell off the environment for profit. We got to make sure that we have and make sure that the environment has a priority, that even though we can make $1 million off this piece of land, we need to keep it for environmental purposes. We need to have that balance so that we can have the carbon that we need so that our climate change don't just kill us. What's the use of having money when we don't have a good environment to live in? And we don't have good food, and we're eating processed food, and we're doing COVID. There was many shelves that were empty because they couldn't bring food in enough. If we had our local foods, that would help a lot. So we want to push for that. So our mission is to rebuild farms so that they not only survive, but they strive by advocating for changes in the laws that will continue to discriminate against minorities. Now, one thing that we want to make sure we do is get farms registered. The only way that you can participate in the federal programs are if the farms are registered. So one of the things we're trying to do is make sure that the Black farms are registered. And then we want to provide information about financial things that's available. And then we want to provide a market platform so that people can buy foods in an easy way. Everybody's kind of buying through the internet or through farmers markets now. So we want to make sure that we're available. I also do tours for kids at my farm. My cattle were bred to be very tame. So the kids get a kick out of being able to go and pet a bull or pet something that's bigger than themselves, or being able to get on and ride a horse. It's so many kids, especially urban Black kids, that don't get a chance to get out into the rural areas and see these things. So that gives me a lot of pleasure to do those kinds of things also. Andy, how's my time? Okay. So we want you, as we start to market our information about Black farms and about Black products, we'd like very much if you could go to our website and see the things that we have and participate, because I really truly love the land. It's very dear to me. I grew up there with my granddad, and my grandsons and I fixed some of the same fencing corner posts that my granddad and I did. So my love for the farm is not a financial thing. It's more of a personal love of legacy. And I think a lot of Black farms are about legacy. One of the things I heard once from one of my elders as I was talking with them, and I asked, why do you guys love this land so much? And they said, because once we were property, and because we were property, we love to take care of the property. So it's a heritage thing. It's a freedom thing. Land provided freedom. My grandparents used to tell me, get some education, get something in your head, because that's something they can't take from you. Get some dirt under your feet, you have a place to live and a place to grow your food. So land ownership and farms in particular were ways in which people were able to feel free. Years ago, farmers were looked at very highly, not because they made money, but because they were independent. They had their own food, they had their own land, they were very independent. So today we want to make sure that these farms stay viable. We want you to support our local farms. We want you to support this push for the packing house in Newberry. We're just not ready, in my opinion, for a plant-based society yet. I think there's room for both, but I think that we got to make sure that we have sustainable farms and have food that's sustainable. Okay, are there any questions? Yes.
Well, I love your land and I love your animals. And so but
Right.
that has been
Right.
can you speak to that?
Yes. One of the things that we want to do with the new packing house is to use all the techniques that the university gives us for humane slaughtering of cattle. Right now, there's about 3 packing houses around, and they are USDA approved. USDA sets the standards for how cattle are slaughtered. What the process usually is now, there's very few people, you can't slaughter on your own land. You basically take it to a processing plant. They are USDA approved. They have the inspectors that go around and they look at how all the procedures are done. One of the reasons we would love to have our own is that now we can actually make sure that everything is done according to a humane standard. Yes, ma'am.
I probably a plant-based diet, but I enjoy a good steak and I enjoy a good burger. And I grew up on a farm where we raised a couple of cows. And so I love this idea for being able to go in with a neighbor and buy. And just like I love this idea. What it sounds like the meat package is fertile. So what, me as an individual, what do we do?
What we'd like to make sure we get that the current meat packing plants are busy. They they don't take small farmers a lot. So we want to push to have this meat packing plant in Newberry. So what we typically do, I'm going to give Andy some information as I get the website together for how you can go in together and buy these. Right now, I use a meat packing plant, Nettles, and I make sure that it's USDA approved, and we can send out a form, and you can select on the form how you want your meat cut up and how you want it fixed. And whether you want, there's a form that indicates for a quarter of a beef, here's what your options are. For a half, here's what your options are. And I can get that as we put that together, I'll get that to Andy. And then there's been groups, church groups that got together and bought meats. And then you can pick it up from Nettles or whichever packing house. If you have your own packing house that you have researched and you want it, we will deliver the cattle to that packing house. And then they will fix it according to what your menu is. Yes, ma'am. This is the main thing right now is the packing. And also we want to make sure that USDA, Natural Conservation Resource, and Farm Services, ask them how they're equally putting out funds to Black farmers. It's not being done right, and we want to make sure that they're doing their part to advertise Black farmers and getting them involved also. But the big issue right now is the meat packing plant that you'll start to see a lot of April. I think it's April. You'll look at the county commission board, but I think it's April 23rd. It's going to come up for a vote, and it's going to be on their agenda. So I would love any support you guys can give for that. Great, great. Yes, ma'am. I think it's a great bill. I saw a little bit about it. Our current administration is doing a great job on trying to provide equity. And I use that word, and I use it not generally, but specifically. If you look at the situation with the farms, how can ever you catch up if everybody's given the same thing? Everybody wasn't taken away the same thing. So the only way you can catch up in a race is if you're given a little bit more to catch up. So it's funny when I hear people against equity, but they're only looking at one side of it. What about what was taken away? The same amount wasn't taken away from everybody. So why does everybody have to get the same thing? So I am for that bill because it does push getting more money so that we can keep the Black farms. And it's the yeah, it's basically a bill that's going to allow some equity to be given to Black and farms and other minority farms. Yes. Yes, yeah, they're right there in Rochelle, and I work with Tom, and I'm actually going to be. He wants me to be on their board. I'm working with him, and we want to lease some equipment that that Black farmers can use. Like I don't want to tear up my land when I get ready to put grass in. So there's a no-till drill that can be used. So I'm talking with them about buying one and then leasing it out to farm. Right. Yes, yes, sir. We leased from, at that time it was Georgia Pacific. My granddad had a lease that was, and that's another discrimination thing that happened. We leased land at back in the 60s, we started, and it was 35 cents an acre. Well, what happened was as they changed ownerships, it's now Weyerhaeuser. They took the leases away from Black people and white people got more land. So now around me is land that we used to lease, which now is leased by a white farmer. Yeah. What they're doing now is they're clear cutting everything. So we have oak trees, we have pine trees that they plant. So clear cutting, used to what they would do is they would leave the oak trees. Now, because of the demand for wood chips, they cut, when they come in, they cut everything. They cut the oaks, they cut the pines, and they chip them up. Now, when the bio plant first started, it was supposed to be using debris, right? Used to things that were left over after they cut the wood. Well, now the bio plant, because natural gas went up, and bio plant was supposed to be a peaking plant. Now it's a base load plant because natural gas is so expensive. So they run it a lot more and they need a lot more fuel. And so now they cut every bit of wood that they can find. And you end up with just desert. Yeah, yeah.
Very special thanks.
Well, thank